What is going on, guys? Bam Deadstroke back with an amazing best of three match here on Magic Online that I just got done playing. Let's jump right into it. So we're playing a new deck to the channel. I shared a little bit about it on Twitter. We're playing Esper Emergency Smothering Riches thing. So we're playing Emergency Powers, which is the 7 mana draw 7 exile emergency powers, but it has addendum where if you cast it during your main phase, after you draw your new 7 cards, you get to put a permanent card with converted mana cost 7 or less onto the battlefield. And we are trying to make that work in Standard. So we're playing against what it looks like green-white tokens from here. This Dawn of Hope is very interesting to me, though. I don't generally see that in green-white token lists, so maybe it's just like a green-white Lifegain type deck. So now we've got the option here of going for Mortify on either the Dawn of Hope or a Saproling token. But they play this Spore Crown Thallid, which makes it even more interesting, because now I legitimately have no idea. It could just be like green-white Saprolings, for all I care. But we go for Mortify here, and we actually target the Thallid to save us some damage. We don't care a super whole lot about the Dawn of Hope, because the Dawn of Hope actually helps us when they draw cards, as long as we have Smothering Tithe in play. So they can pay 2 to draw a card whenever they gain life, but if they don't want us to get a treasure token, they have to pay 4 instead. So our opponent is swarming the board here with Saprolings, and we really don't have anything. So we're going to Chemister's Insight here. We hit a Smothering Tithe and a Mastermind's Acquisition. So not super beneficial. But we're going to go ahead and main phase Precognitive Perception. We're going to put all 3 of those at the bottom: Chemister's Insight, Island, and Mortify. Draw 3 cards, move to end step, and clean up. We can discard a couple of our shock lands here. We've got 2 Smothering Tithes, a Revel and Riches, 2 Revel and Riches actually. Our opponent plays Legion's Landing. They're going to swing in for 5, bringing us down to 9. They're also going to flip their Legion's Landing. Our opponent then activates their Legion's Landing here, second main phase, to make another lifelink token. And really at this point we needed Mortify or Cleansing Nova, and we missed hitting Mortify. So we will go ahead and Mastermind's Acquisition for Sedekaya's Wrath coming out of our deck. Hopefully we can survive until next turn. Our opponent will be swinging in for 7. We are at 9, so as long as they don't play anything with haste or any sort of buff, we will survive. However, our opponent has other ideas, playing Tendershoot Dryad, buffing all their Saprolings, and attacking in for lethal. We will scoop it up. We will move on to game number 2. Sideboarded in 2 Kaya's Wraths, a Cleansing Nova, and can't remember what the 4th card was. But we took out some of our card draw stuff. We took out the Precognitive Perceptions and Chemister's Insights, just because we were on the play. That's probably not what we were supposed to do, but we went with it anyway. So we've got turn 3 Mortify again. Our opponent plays a turn 1 Legion's Landing. We draw into Emergency Powers. Go ahead and play our Godless Shrine tapped. Opponent untaps, plays a Memorial to Glory, swings in for 1. We are just fine taking that damage. We draw into one of the interesting cards in the deck, which is Warrant to Warden, or Warrant/Warden. Not really sure what the middle word is supposed to be. Warrant to Warden, Warrant and Warden, whatever. So now we have the choice. We can either Mortify the Legion's Landing or the token, or we can also Warrant the token. And since we do not have any more lands in our hand, it doesn't really matter which one we do, but we decide to Warrant the token as opposed to Mortifying it or the Legion's Landing. We draw into the 4th land. We will go ahead and shock ourselves. We're going to go ahead and straight away play this Smothering Tithe. I don't exactly know what our opponent said. They didn't say anything in the chat or anything, but I assume their response to this was, "What in the world is Bam Deadstroke playing?" So we go ahead and get the treasure token, bringing us up to 5 land. Our opponent plays a second Legion's Landing, sacrifices one of them. back up to 3 tokens, and then they swarm us with a saproling migration, swinging in for 2, taking us down to 15. Our opponent is up to 5 creatures in play. They can flip their Legion's Landing next turn. We go ahead and draw a 5th land. We're actually going to mortify the Legion's Landing here because we don't want that to transform. This will also allow us to possibly play Emergency Powers next turn. And after our opponent plays this lovely Tendershoot Dryad, we will be taking quite a bit of damage here. So our opponent takes us all the way from 15 down to 6 as they swing in for 9. They're also going to get a 1/1 saproling at the beginning of our upkeep. We draw Unmoored Ego. Oh, that was the 4th card that we brought in, was Unmoored Ego, in case we wanted to name Tendershoot Dryad. We just go for the emergency powers here. We crack both of our treasure tokens to use our emergency powers to draw 7 cards. We put a Revel in Riches in play over the Azor because, as you will see, we get a bunch of tokens off of Smothering Tithe. 7 to be exact, because our opponent, off of the emergency powers, drew 7 cards. We also drew into Cleansing Nova, which we will go ahead and play. And this is the great interaction. Because we put in the Revel in Riches, whenever a creature our opponent controls dies, we get a treasure token. So we pay 5 to play the Cleansing Nova, but we end up killing like 7 things. So we get 7 treasures back, which means on our opponent's upkeep, they either pay 2 or we get a treasure token. They decide to skip the 2 mana for some reason. And then, of course, they have Cleansing Nova, which is why they decided to skip the payment. We have an Absorb in hand, so we will go ahead and counter that, and our opponent scoops it up there. We had 7 treasures. We also had Azor and Search for Azcanta in hand, so I felt pretty good about that. Our opponent scooped it up anyway, and we moved to Game 3. I left our deck the exact same from Game 2, even on the play, which usually isn't the smartest thing to do. But I felt good about it. So this game, we've got turn 2 Azcanta and turn 4 Smothering Tithe. So as long as we can draw into some removal, we should have a pretty solid game against an aggressive deck. And what do you know, we draw into one of our copies of Settle the Wreckage. So now I'm feeling really good about this game. And then our opponent plays a Johnny's Welcome. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under their control, they gain a life. But I like our turn 2 enchantment a lot more than I like their turn 2 enchantment. As we get down Search for Azcanta with 3 more lands and 3 really quality spells for the deck in hand. Our opponent, turn 3, plays a Resplendent Angel, which I'm actually kind of scared of. 3 mana, 3/3 flyer. We don't want to waste Settle the Wreckage on just a 3/3 flyer, so we want to see if they commit to the board anymore. And we decide to put the Godless Shrine in the bin, leave up Absorb here, and pass the turn to our opponent. Swings in for 3, taking us down to 17. And our opponent does nothing with the rest of their turn, as they did not have a 4th land. We mill a swamp with our Search for Azcanta, play a Plains, and then we just go straight for the Smothering Tithe, much like we did in the previous game. It worked out then. Maybe it'll work out again in this one. We pass the turn back to our opponent. Our opponent decides to actually pay 2 mana here to keep our Smothering Tithe from giving us a treasure token, which, if they're burning 2 mana this early in the game, I am sort of okay with that. On the attack, they swing in with the Resplendent Angel again, which is expected, taking us down to 14. We get Mastermind's Acquisition, and I decide to throw it into the graveyard just to try to advance our Azcanta, as well as to try to dig deeper into our deck, because we've already got the Smothering Tithe in play. So if we could hit an Emergency Powers or Revel in Riches without having to use Mastermind's Acquisition, the better. On our opponent's draw step, Smothering Tithe triggers again. They go ahead and pay 2 again, swinging in with the Resplendent Angel, taking us down to 11. At this point, I'm starting to get a little worried that we're going to have to waste this Settle the Wreckage on a single 3/3. And then Search for his Canto reveals Revel and Riches, which we decide to bin because we really want emergency powers here. But we decide to throw out the blocker in Azor the Lawbringer, which can easily take care of this 3/3 should they attack with it. And we also make it so that our opponent cannot cast instants or sorceries on their next turn. So should they have a 5th land and a Cleansing Nova or something like that, we avoid that. Our opponent decides to give us the treasure token, which kind of led me to believe that they had a 5-drop, and boy did they have a 5-drop. Lyra Dawnbringer coming in. We do not have mana up for Absorb because we played the blocker, but Azor does his job keeping back our opponent, and then we see emergency powers with our Escanto. We decide to draw that, play our land, shock down to 9 because we need to, and why the heck not. And we go straight for the emergency powers, hitting Chromium the Mutable, which is just an insane draw for our deck. Our treasure tokens stack up. We are up to 8 treasure tokens. Mortify and Mastermind's Acquisition in hand. Settle the Wreckage that we can play with our now 9 treasure tokens. And our opponent goes for the Spore Swarm, gaining them 3 life off of the Ajani's Welcome. And then they scoop it up. They just decide to scoop it up, which is great for us. We take this game in 3. There will be a deck tech coming tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope to see you there for the deck tech, and I will see you guys next time.